I didn't know what Pentecost was, but I had an encounter, and something happened to me in that moment, and it was though this like if you have a phaser stun from Star Trek, this thing went all the way through my midsection. This warm life went all the way through my midsection. I literally stepped back and said, "Whoa, what was that?" And he said, "Jesus just came into your heart."
Wow.
I said, "Literally? That literally happens?"
We are ready. We're rolling in 3, 2, 1.
Well, I'm here with my good friend Lance Wallnau, and it's such an honor that I get the privilege of interviewing you. Usually you're the one asking me questions, and I want to just pick your brain. But people may not know you because this is now shown all over the world.
Right.
Just share a little bit, Lance, of your story, how you came to know the Lord and how God called you to the ministry, but how now you are such a major consultant, but also you have your own news show, and you're so involved in the government mountain. So tell us this odyssey that you went through.
Well, the curious thing is, we were just talking about growing up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, because that's where your history here in Pasadena, California, with Azusa and Frank Bartleman. I tracked the journey of that intercessor from Bucks County all the way out to here, where your auditorium is. It's right over it. So. And I'm finding that out today. That's why it's on my mind. But I grew up in Bucks County. And when I became a Christian, it was because my dad sent me to a military school, and because he didn't think that I was going to amount to anything unless he got me away from theater and girls and my mother. So that was what he said. He said, because my mother would interfere with discipline, and she'd say, he's young, leave him alone. And my dad was a military guy.
Now, it's amazing because most people will say drugs, gangs, and you're talking about girls.
No,
you're talking about
mine were
theater.
far more biblical. Mine was the lust of the flesh and the pride of life. So I loved theater, and I loved the girls, and my mom messed up my discipline, according to my dad. So he's a World War II. He started off with Patton, ended up with Jimmy Doolittle. So he's a cigar smoking business guy, a hard-nosed oil man, and he felt that I was going to amount to nothing. As he said, how are you going to make a living just talking? which is ironic, because later on he said, I figured out how you make a living talking, because that's pretty much what I do.
Right.
So he sends you to military school, and you can be so miserable that you will seek God. And so a lot of people
was this a Christian military school?
Oh, no.
Okay.
It's like West Point.
Okay.
So Valley Forge Military Academy is right where George Washington crossed the Delaware, the historic freezing cold winters there. And it was modeled after West Point. It's an academy literally operating like a military unit, with guards at the gates and rifles and formations. And, it was basically training for Villanova or for the Air Force Academy or for West Point. And or you could opt out and go to secular college, which I chose to. I wasn't really cut out for the military.
Right. So
in my second year, I'm so desperate and miserable that I pray, God, if there is a God anywhere in the universe, make yourself real to me. Make yourself real to me. Surely this is not the highest form of intelligence. If you're around an all-male institute, you know that it's so degenerate. It's just bizarre. So I said, this can't be the zenith of intelligence in the moral universe. And I thought that there was going to be a flying saucer experience, because I grew up Episcopalian and Catholic. So I already had the church experience. I was looking for an extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
And outside of my barracks, in December of 1973, I found two guys that were from Campus Crusade for Christ. They had jeans like this and long hair. And I couldn't believe it. They were right outside my barracks. And I walked up to them.
Now, what are they doing in a private school? I mean, don't they have security?
Exactly. I said, how the heck did you get here? And they said, we just walked here. I said, you walked past the armed guards? Somehow they were blinded. They didn't see them. They walked past armed guards and stood outside of my barracks. There could have been 20 barracks, mine.
Right.
And so I go, look, man, you got to get out of here. This is hostile. These people, this isn't a good place for you to be right now. This is like a prison colony. And he goes, well, I'm here sharing. I go, oh gosh, are you a religious fanatic? So I'm feeling sorry for him. So I take a look at his little four spiritual laws. Four spiritual laws. That's it. So I'm looking at the four spiritual laws. I go, this is what you're doing? He goes, yeah. And I go, man, you could be anywhere right now, and you're here doing this. I was feeling sorry for him. Like, what a life, you know? Like, if
Right.
I was free, I'd let my hair grow like him. I'd be out partying. So I'm talking to him, and while I'm talking to him, from the second story window, a bucket of water gets dumped on him by 5. It's like demonic. Anyone who was demonic on that academy. Most kids were sent there by their parents who were wealthy, wanted to train their kids. A couple were juveniles. All the juveniles were demonically attracted to this moment. I looked up, they're all in one window. I could see Mike Geary, a couple of other guys up there who we knew were trouble.
Yeah.
And they had got this bucket full of water and they dumped it on this guy. So he's soaking wet. There's like 5 inches, 6 inches of snow.
So these Campus Crusaders, they dumped it on one of the guys.
Oh, yeah. He's soaking wet. And the other guy over here is getting pummeled with snowballs. And this guy now is soaking wet. And I jump back, of course, thinking, because now the natives are restless. Now we've got a bunch of guys there packing snowballs.
Yeah.
And they're only leaving him alone because I'm talking to him. I said, hey, whoa. I say, you see what I mean? I think you guys ought to go. It's getting a little out of hand now. And the guy looks at me, total composure. And he says, this is a message that has had us stoned, burned alive, drowned, crucified for 2,000 years.
Mm.
I'm perfectly willing to stay here if you're interested in listening.
Wow.
And in that moment, I stepped out of myself and looked at him. And I looked at the academy. We're all taught leadership skills, and this is where the future leaders of America. And I looked at him. I said, "This guy, probably my age, has more of something of a quality of courage and belief than anyone on this campus." So now I'm trapped with the realization that he's not a religious fanatic. He's actually got something, whatever his fanaticism is, that I admire. I said, "Man." So I said, "Well, look, what do you want me to do to help you leave?" And he shares with me the gospel and he says, "Pray." And I go, "Pray?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Here?
Right now?
Right in front of them?" He goes, "In front of them." And that was the moment, Papa Ché, when I was convicted I was a sinner. Because if you grow up in church, you think you're a Christian. If you've been around, if you don't reject Jesus, I'm not a Satanist. Oh, sure, Jesus likes it. So if you're that kind of a person who grows up in a Catholic culture or something, you don't know that you're not a Christian. You think you are. In that moment, I realized I was ashamed to be publicly identified with Jesus, even though the most noble exhibition of Christian witness was in front of me, soaking wet, persecuted, and standing courageously for me. And in that moment, I was ashamed of myself and realized I don't know Jesus. I don't even want to own him in front of these people. So I prayed, and I prayed the sinner's prayer, and something happened because I'm Pentecostal in my background. It doesn't have to be this way, but folks like us, we like to see and know something's going on. I didn't know what Pentecost was, but I had an encounter, and something happened to me in that moment, and it was as though this like if you have a phaser stun from Star Trek, this thing went all the way through my midsection. This warm life went all the way through my midsection. I literally stepped back and said, "Whoa, what was that?" And he said, "Jesus just came into your heart."
Wow.
I said, "Literally? You mean this thing?" Because I'm thinking Jesus comes into your heart. It sounds like a song. I said, "That literally happens?" He goes, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "I could see that you're going to need some help." He says, "I'm going to have to disciple you and come back." I say, "Oh, you don't get it. You don't understand." I said, "It's a miracle that you got on this campus, and it's a miracle if I ever see you again." At that moment, campus police came and grabbed him and his buddy and dragged them off in the snow. And I never saw him again.
That is amazing. So you're talking about a divine appointment that God brought them in just for you because he knew your heart, that you would open your heart to him. And a lot of people don't realize this is 73, December. We're talking about right at the peak of the Jesus People movement. You didn't even know that, right?
I didn't even know about it.
We didn't even know about it. I didn't know about it because I got saved in 73 as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so it's amazing that the Spirit of God was moving. And we're both in the East Coast. I was in Maryland. You were in Pennsylvania when I got saved. It was amazing. So,
and it was a divine, I'm telling you, so when it happens, I'm walking around I grabbed the Four Spiritual Laws, and I'm telling my friends, I didn't know how to interpret this. I'm walking around saying, hey, say this prayer. I thought it was the incantation. I thought, I've got a religious spirit already. It's like, say that prayer and watch what happens. And nobody was doing it. And so then I realized, why aren't they open like me? They were, oh, that crap. They were cussing and throwing the thing on the ground. It's like, oh my gosh, the unbelief around here. I couldn't find a person and I thought if you said the prayer, you get zapped. And so I'm walking around trying to find someone that knows about that prayer. I thought,
Well, you know,
prayer
it's
was-
amazing because this is the first time it registered to me because I got a hold of the four spiritual law tract. And the first group I talked to were my friends that used to party with me, my girlfriend, my best friend. I called them over to the house. They thought I was throwing a party. And I started reading the four spiritual laws to them because hoping that they would get saved. But conviction came. And my girlfriend, a former girlfriend, said, you know what? I think what you're saying is truth. One day I want to do this, but right now I want to party. And so she didn't give it a heart, but it was amazing. The four spiritual law was my first message I shared with my, as a new convert with my
You had more
friends.
sense than me. You see, you read to them what the four spiritual laws were. I just went right to the prayer. I actually went on weekends on leave. I kid you not. I went to the Methodist church. I went to Episcopal. I went to go find churches. And I'd hunt down the rector, the pastor, and the reverend. I'd say, hey, did you ever say a prayer and get zapped? Because to me, I've been to church. I was looking for a particular kind of church.
Sure.
A church where you get zapped and you meet guys like that. It was soaking wet and this was real. And I couldn't find a person to explain to me what being born again was. And this was in church. I couldn't find someone to explain it.
Well, the same thing happened to me because the year before my conversion, I was in North Carolina. I was busted for drugs. My dad sent me to my uncle's place, and they had a Billy Graham Explo 72 was taking place. I'm talking about every channel was Billy Graham. We had 3 channels back in those days. So ABC, NBC, CBS, and just turning the channel, Billy Graham. Finally, I listened to him. And when I got saved, I said, I need to find a church that's like Billy Graham. So I went to a Presbyterian Church of Atonement, but the guy gave an altar call every Sunday. He was from Dallas Theological Seminary. He didn't believe in the spiritual gifts or anything like that, but he preached the gospel, and that's the first church I went to because I needed to follow someone that understood what I was going through of being born again.
Right.
So it's amazing the parallels that...
The parallels are right there. And I couldn't find the church. I went to Lebanon Valley College. That was my college. And I picked it largely because it sounded like a Bible thing. Lebanon Valley. I figured this destiny must be calling me there. It beat, other school titles. So I got accepted there. It was in Lancaster County. And I can remember going to the cafeteria. And at this point in time, I was beginning to think that maybe I was someone special. That maybe I had an encounter with God because there was only a few of us, because I couldn't find it. Christianity is everywhere except when you're looking for it.
Right.
So after you're a believer, it's ubiquitous. Like
I was the only
picnic.
one that was saved. I went back to my high school. I found one person that was absolutely a nerd. And he became my friend because I would never have hung out with him. But he was the only one. He's the one that actually brought me to Church of Atonement, this Presbyterian evangelical
See, you
church.
got to find the nerd. So here, I found the nerd. What happened was I see one guy in a cafeteria line. And this is so bizarre because they have the cafeteria over here. And it's a long line. And they opened up the other cafeteria and the line breaks. And so I walk up like 20 feet behind a guy who's a nerd carrying a Bible. I thought, well, this looks like a possibility. This guy's carrying. So I said to him, hey, you a religion major? He goes, yes, I'm a religion major. I go, did you ever pray a prayer and get zapped? And I'm talking to him because I'm still looking for that one. He goes, oh, yeah. I go, you have? He said, absolutely. I said, what happened? He goes, well, I got born again. That's what I said. There's a word for this? He said, you were born again. I said, how many of us are there? Oh, there's a lot of us. I said, well, you're the first one. So that's the guy that introduced me to a Pentecostal home prayer meeting where I got filled with the Spirit.
That's awesome.
And the owner had a bookstore at the meeting, and he had a bookstore. So I used to hang out in his bookstore, and that's where I got a hold of all the Christian books and developed a love for those books.
At Wagner University, we offer bachelor's, master's, and doctorate programs through a hybrid learning system. What makes Wagner University unique is online accessibility, transformational learning, practical application, and impartation of the Holy Spirit. Wagner University now offers pathways for students to receive accredited U.S. degrees from anywhere in the world. We encourage you to pray about enrolling. Your life will never be the same.
In Luke chapter 6, verse 12, Jesus goes up to the mountain and prays all night. And when he comes down from the mountain, he calls his disciples to himself. He selects 12 and he calls them apostles. Why apostles? An apostle is someone who brings transformation to society. Jesus gave the Great Commission to the 12 apostles, and he said, make disciples of all nations.
If you would like to learn more or purchase a copy of Modern Day Apostles, visit cheahn.org.
Welcome back to Equipping the Saints with Ché Ahn.
Now, when I first met you, it was during 2000, we were mobilizing for the call, and you were a pastor in Providence.
Yes.
And how did you get called into the ministry? Because there's been such a shift even since then in what you're doing now. So give me that story, that odyssey.
Absolutely.
How did you feel called to the ministry, and how did you become a pastor?
You know, that's, people don't normally ask me that. But what happened was after I got saved, I really felt that to be a preacher, you had to be a really holy person, because you're thinking like,
Of course, yeah.
really holy people. And so I had this legalistic mindset that if I wasn't really perfect, that I'm not called to ministry. So I figured I'm probably called to pay, like a business guy, like I'll fund ministry.
Right.
So I worked as an oil industry consultant for a Fortune 500 company in Babylon, New York. And so
Actually, the town Babylon,
literally
not
in Babylon.
using a metaphor
And so
to
I was
describe
there
New
in
York
Babylon.
City.
Exactly. And people, if you're in New York, you know what I'm talking about, Long Island, Babylon, Long Island. And our corporate headquarters was in Syosset, right off the Jericho Turnpike. You know there was Christians there. And some of them, there must have been a battle going on. One person called this part Babylon, the other person said Jericho. So I'm up there, and I'm watching Christians. I'm watching Christian television stuff, because I didn't have a church I was affiliated with. And I'm working in the corporate office. But I was practicing my faith, because I would go around at night and do prayer walking around the place. Nobody taught me this stuff. And I pray in the Spirit and lay hands in place. I figured I'll take care of the atmosphere here, and then people start getting saved.
It's
And the
amazing
next
how
day-
the Lord led you. Now, did you go to college? Did you graduate and went into the marketplace?
I left
for a job?
left college after 2 years
Okay.
because it's a weird thing. But back then, that you were taught Jesus is coming back any day.
Right.
So what do you want to do in the world system? I
Right.
mean, you're not thinking about business or education. You're thinking about getting as many people saved as possible.
Oh, I want to drop out of college.
Right, exactly.
I went there the first year, and then I said, Dad, because I had read
Late Great Planet Earth. Exactly.
I saw
That's
the
what
movie,
happened to
The
me.
Rapture, but my dad was an Asian pastor. He
That's
says, you're not going to,
Oh,
the whole
yes.
purpose of us immigrating is for you to get an education. And not only that, you have to promise me you'll get a MDiv, because he was a pastor. And I go to seminary, get an MDiv. And I said, whatever, Dad. And he says, you promise me. And I said, okay, I will, not thinking I was going to keep that, but that he held me to that. When I moved to Pasadena and I was so close to Fuller, he calls me, you're 10 minutes away from the seminary I would go to, and I want you to go there. And he had me, I had made a commitment that it was spurious, very casual, but he held me to that word that I gave him. And I thank God, because I met Peter Wagner, and, the call, met you. But so you are now working in the marketplace. I'm sure
Yeah.
your dad, was he happy? Or
Well, here's my dad, attorney. So he's got a law degree. He's got an engineering degree. And he looked at me and he said, it was rather demeaning. He said, well, son, not everyone is college material. So he said, but you are a persuasive young man. And so I think you've got a future in marketing. So I took over corporate marketing. And I did training for the corporation. So I made my money in corporate. And he was a vice president of the oil company, and I was a rising star in the divisions for the corporation. So he was happy, and I was feeling like, well, I'm not qualified to preach. But I kept getting convicted, because I'd read in the Bible that, come out of Babylon, my people. And here I am living in Babylon. Literally, I'm in Babylon every day. And I'm thinking, I should just give myself to working for the church, for revival. I may not be a preacher, but I should be an evangelist. Right. I could be a soul winner. How bad are you going to mess people up if you're a soul winner? Right. You're not going to mess them up. So I decided I was going to leave the Babylon corporate life. So I was the rich young ruler. And I led a bunch of people to the Lord there, and had a great ministry. And I used to take Chick Tracts. Remember Chick Tracts?
Oh, yeah.
I used to take Chick Tracts, and I'd unroll the toilet paper in the men's room. And I would roll in the Chick Tracts. And I would set them off as kind of like little evangelistic terrorism tactics. So guys would be coming out of the men's, and they didn't know, because at this point they didn't know that I was an evangelist, because I was acting corporate, and I was thinking I'll be a little bit, covert here. But they come out of the men's room going, you won't believe it. They're sharing these chick tracts and stuff. And so gradually word gets out that it was me. And I'm leading people to the Lord. We had our whole sales department. I think I led in my wedding with my wife. All the guys who are in the wedding are guys I led to the Lord.
Wow.
Out of the oil industry.
That's
so
amazing.
I figured I'm an evangelist.
Right.
That's what I'm called to do.
Sure.
So I left Babylon to go work with churches and leave the business world so I could go dedicate myself.
Now, where are you living? You're in Long Island, so you joined a church in Long Island?
No, Philadelphia.
Oh, Philadelphia, okay.
And in Philadelphia, we helped to start a church, Upper Room. I think it was Upper Room. No, it was Book of Acts, Church of Acts. Look at my wife over here, Church of Acts. And the Church of Acts was on the second floor, church plant. And the pastor didn't have a worship leader. And so I volunteered to be a worship leader. So I'd play the piano and he would preach. And it was a Church of Acts on the second floor over an auto body shop, which was really bad. Because when the guy in the winter, he would close the doors and work on cars, and all the fumes would come upstairs. And then everyone's getting asphyxiated up in the upper room where we had the Church of Acts. And so we'd have the ceiling fans going. But if I was really good in worship, people would be raising their hands. And inevitably, we had guys whose hands were going into the ceiling fans, which is like, I'd be watching them. It wasn't an optimal experience. Right? We really hadn't thought this church plan through.
Sure.
But it grew. And by the time that this thing got larger, I had run into prophets. And a couple of them said, you're kind of, you're like got a call in your life, but you just need to get kind of set in. And so I went to Rhode Island for a prophetic gathering. And I knelt before these seasoned prophets, and they prophesied a word that addressed the whole battle I had in my head about not being worthy to be called of God, not being adequate, and that I had a global ministry, and that I was going to be going to other countries and other lands, pretty much what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And that blasted me out of that legalistic self-condemnation that I wasn't good enough. And then I started working, then I ended up pastoring for 20 years, which was not my calling. So like Kenneth Hagin says, when you're not in the call of God, it's like taking a shower with your socks on.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew I was wet, but it just didn't feel right. So, and when I travel, I'd meet great people like you, and inevitably people would say, are you sure you're called to be a pastor? And I always thought, am I so bad that everywhere I go, people are even saying, they could pick up on the scent of, oh, you're really
So
bad.
you didn't really have someone teach you about the fivefold ministry or marketplace ministry or anything like that at that time?
It was nothing out there on that. And so it was when actually I got called by leaders and organizations, the United Nations, or the business guys.
Right.
And they started asking me to help them with their companies because I did corporate earlier in my life. And I said, oh, I don't touch anything unclean now. I'm a holy man. I'm on staff with churches. I work with churches. And I remember one guy said, I'm not asking you to defile yourself. I'm asking you to help my organization. And I got so convicted. You're not asking me to defile. I said, oh, maybe I could help you. So I went in and started consulting with churches, and then it opened up doors to the United Nations and businesses.
Wow.
And I realized there was no theology for this. That why, I was so radically devoted to the church, I left the corporate business world to be dedicated to the church because that's the work of God. And then when I was in church, the Lord said, now you've answered the call.
Right.
I'm going to show you. And I got a revelation of 7 mountains. And that's when I got the 7 mountains thing. When I realized God's domain is over all the earth, and the church is the epicenter of the spiritual formation of a community, but the disciples go into government, into law, into journalism, into business, into education. And to the degree we do that, we're discipling culture. And to the degree we fail to do that, we're potentially setting ourselves up to the devil disciples culture.
Wow. So you received a revelation that was really ahead of your time, because we didn't really hear about the 7 Mountain Mandate, really from you, but also Peter Wagner, much later on, really when I was a pastor of Harvest Rock Church, which I started in 94, and then we heard about it in 2000 and beyond. But that's amazing. You received this revelation. So that freed you up to leave the pastorate to be in vocational ministry, and you started to consult churches, consult businesses. But how did you
get governments, and then end up with politicians and government? And I'd say to myself, I said, I have no idea. Where's the education you get to do this? I mean, it's not part of a seminary training.
No, we're not trained in seminary for that at all.
And by that point, I had gone back to ORU and got a master's degree, and so I finished
So
off.
you went back to school.
Went back to school in my 40s, and went back and picked off the degrees. And that was because I was challenged by someone to say, you can't teach in a university unless you're a master's degree from a credentialed school. And
Right.
some of you guys actually have the life experience, but you need to go do the work.
Right.
So I flew out to ORU to do the work to get the master's.
Yeah, it's amazing. The same thing with me because I was already a pastor. But again, the promise I made to my dad, so I got my MDiv and my doctorate when I was in my 30s, so even though it was in the 40s, but nevertheless later on in life, which is something that's really important, that if you are interested in getting a degree or diploma, I want to just put in a 2 cents here about Wagner University, because that's the school that Peter Wagner started. And it's amazing how it's developed. You're one of our faculty. You teach on the Seven Mountain Week. That's one of the most popular courses. And so, Lance, you have such an international ministry, it's so profound. How can people be in touch with you? How could they order books that you've written and stay in touch?
Absolutely. We have like close to 1 million subscribers on our platforms now. And you can just go to lancewallnau.com, WALLNAU.com, and we'll be able to connect right there.
And those who are watching, if you're hungry, you're saying something's missing in my life, I want to give you an invitation right now, because the answer is Jesus. He died for you. He loves you. He wants you to be part of his family. And so I want to give you an invitation to pray this prayer with me. In fact, Lance, I'm going to ask you to pray this prayer. Why don't you give the sinner's prayer for people to pray and repeat after you, and so they can give their hearts to the Lord.
Absolutely. And I want you to pray if you feel like you're out of the will of God, because if you were really in the will of God, you'd be doing some ministry work. There's probably someone out there listening to a story like this and saying,
Right.
That's me. So just say this: Heavenly Father, I come to you in the name of Jesus, and I ask you to forgive me for all of my sins. Wash me now in the blood of Jesus, and give me your Holy Spirit. I dedicate myself to you, to serve you, to follow you all the days of my life. Lord Jesus, come into my heart and make me into the person you want me to be. In Jesus' name.
Amen. If you pray that prayer, we want to send you information and help you to grow. Just look at the website that's below, and we'll be in touch with you in the days ahead. We love you. Thank you so much, Lance. This was amazing. I didn't realize it was going to turn this way, but I was going to talk about Revive California, but this is amazing.
Yeah.
But God knows that someone needs to hear this message. Thank you so much.
Be sure to join us and all of our amazing guests for this season of Equipping the Saints. If you're ever visiting the area, we'd love to see you at one of our 5 campuses. For more information, check out our website or any of our social media platforms.